First story. The Grunts beneath Hollow Creek. I never believed in local legends. Ghosts, monsters, cryptids. I always chalked it up to boredom and too much alcohol in small towns. But something happened to me last fall that I can't explain. And I don't think I'll ever sleep right again. It started when I got laid off from my job in Dallas. Out of desperation, I took a property caretaker gig out in rural Texas. Hollow Creek was a speck on the map. A town of maybe 200 people, all suspicious of outsiders. My assignment was to watch over an abandoned pig farm 5 miles out of town. The owners disappeared in the 90s, and no one ever bought the land. Locals said the place was cursed. They called it Grunter's Hollow. The farmhouse leaned like it was drunk. The windows were busted out, and the barn looked like it had been clawed open by something huge. When I asked around, an old man at the gas station warned me. "Don't go rooting around there after dark," he said, voice like sandpaper. "You wake him up, you won't make it to sunrise." I laughed it off, but that first night I heard it. Something grunting in the woods. It wasn't a wild hog. I know the sound of a hog. This was wetter, slower, like breath being forced through a torn throat. I didn't sleep. The second night I found muddy hoof prints outside the front door. They looked like pig tracks, but too big, way too big. I took a picture, but when I checked my phone, the image was corrupted, just static and a faint pinkish blur. On the third night, I saw it. I was on the porch, shotgun in hand, when something stepped out of the tree line. It walked on 2 legs, nearly 7 feet tall. Its skin looked stretched and blistered, and its head was a pig's. But the eyes, those weren't animal eyes. They were human, bloodshot, focused. It sniffed the air, grunted, then turned back into the woods. I should have left. I should have gotten in my truck and driven straight back to Dallas. But I stayed. God help me. I stayed. I spent the next day barricading the doors and windows. That night, I set up cameras, motion sensors, floodlights. Around midnight, the sensors tripped, then silence, then the grunting. I watched through the monitors as it walked right past the cameras. The feed crackled each time it got close, like it was interfering with the signal. It stopped at the barn, looked straight into the camera, and smiled. That was the first time I heard the whispering. It came from inside the house. Dozens of voices overlapping, some laughing, some screaming, one repeating the same thing over and over, "Grunt for me." I turned and saw the basement door slowly creaking open. I didn't even know the house had a basement. The steps were slick with something dark. It reeked of rot and iron. I made it halfway down before my flashlight died, and then I heard it behind me. It grunted. I ran, didn't look back. I locked myself in the truck and waited until sunrise. The town sheriff didn't believe me, said the farm's been abandoned for decades, no reports of intruders. But when I asked about the owners, his face turned pale. They had a son, he said, deformed, kept him in the barn, said he went feral after they died. That was all he'd say. I went back one last time, just to prove to myself that I hadn't imagined it. The barn door was open. Inside, I found old restraints, chains, bones, a diary from the mother. One entry stood out. "Tommy doesn't grunt like the pigs anymore. He mimics the voices now. He watches us when we sleep. I think he's becoming something else." I don't know what's out there, but it's not human, and it's not alone. Sometimes in the dead of night, I still hear it, grunting, calling my name, waiting. Second story. Whispers behind the feed barn. They always said the old Garrison farm had a bad smell to it. Not the usual stench of livestock or manure, something fouler, darker, like rot that had a memory. I never believed any of that crap. My name's Kyle Mercer, and I was raised on the other side of Henderson County, Texas. I've done hard work since I could walk, and I didn't have time for ghost stories or drunk ramblings from guys who hadn't seen a clean day since the Clinton administration. But then I got a call from Clay Garrison. He was the last of his line. Everyone else in that cursed family either drank themselves to death or vanished. Clay needed help fixing up the old farm. Said he wanted to sell it before it swallowed him too. I should have said no. God, I should have said no. It started the day I pulled my truck down that winding gravel road. July heat shimmered on the horizon, cicadas screaming like banshees in the brush. The barn looked like it hadn't seen a lick of paint since Reagan was in office. Rust clung to the silo like dried blood. Clay greeted me with a nod, cigarette in mouth, eyes red and hollow. "Appreciate you coming," he muttered. "They're not happy you're here." I chuckled, thinking he meant his goats, or maybe some squatters. "No, Kyle," he said. "I mean them." The first night, I slept in the farmhouse. Bad idea. Floorboards groaned like something heavy shuffled underneath. Pipes hissed even though the water was shut off. And the worst part, right around 3 in the morning, I heard something scratching at my door. Not like a raccoon or possum. I grew up around animals. This sounded like knuckles. Slow, deliberate taps that grew louder the longer I ignored them. By morning, Clay was already outside, knee-deep in a pig pen that hadn't housed swine in over a decade. "You hear the knocking?" he asked without turning. "Yeah," I replied, uneasy. "You got rats?" He laughed. Not the funny kind, the kind that sounded like someone who forgot how to feel joy. "They're curious," he said. "They remember new voices." Second day, I worked in the feed barn. Dust choked the air. Sunlight pushed through the cracked slats in pale beams. That's when I found it. A trapdoor beneath a pile of decaying sacks, heavy, iron-braced, bolted shut with 3 padlocks. I asked Clay. He went white. "Don't open it," he whispered. "That's where Pa put the bad ones." I pressed him. He finally broke. Back in the 40s, the garrisons bred more than livestock. They did experiments. Clay's great-grandfather believed he could merge animal instinct with human cognition, said it'd create a better worker, more obedient, more productive. They started with pigs. It worked, but not in the way they hoped. The first one, Abel, was a man with a snout, hooves for hands, sharp tusks, born from a woman who died screaming. Abel was smart, too smart. He didn't want to work, he wanted revenge. Clay said they trapped them all under the barn, sealed the hatch, buried the truth. I didn't believe him, until that night. The knocking returned, louder, closer. At 3:15, the trapdoor rattled. By 4, I saw one through the window, a man-shaped figure walking on all fours, skin pale and stretched, a pig's face grafted over his skull. It stared up at me. I screamed. Clay barged in with a shotgun. "You looked at them, didn't you?" He made me drink from a rusted flask. Said it was to dull the call. Didn't work. The third day, Clay was gone. Found his truck running at the edge of the cornfield. Driver's door wide open, radio playing static. His boots were 10 feet apart, standing straight up. No footprints around them, just drag marks. I should have left, I tried. But every time I reached the road, I ended up back at the farmhouse. They wouldn't let me leave. I boarded the trapdoor, nailed it shut, prayed, cried. Then the voices started. Low whispers at first, then full-on sentences. "Join us. You're one of us. You smell like home." They came for me that night. Boards snapped. Screams tore through the wood. They climbed the walls like spiders. Abel stood tall, flesh pink and wet. His tusks glistened with hunger. "You're ready," he said. I blacked out. I woke up in the trapdoor pit. They hadn't killed me. They wanted me to change. Every day, they feed me slop. Clay's flask lies empty beside my bed of bones. I can feel my hands hardening, my nails growing thicker, my skin, rough, bristled. I don't remember my name, only the scent of blood and the hunger. Please, don't come here. We remember voices. Third story. The hushed howls of Briarvale Farm. They say some towns just vanish. Not with a bang, not with a storm. Just disappear. That's what happened to Briarvale. It used to be a small farming community nestled between the tree-choked hills of northern Kentucky. A quiet, God-fearing town with no more than a few dozen families. You wouldn't find it on most maps these days, and even the locals avoid the name. I only ended up there because of my brother Eli. He was the curious one. The kind of guy who always had a camera slung over his shoulder and a head full of urban legends. He started his YouTube channel about abandoned places about 3 years ago. His views spiked when he uploaded a series about haunted mining towns. He had guts, or maybe just no fear at all. 3 weeks ago, he called me from some rundown motel in Harlan County. Said he'd found a lead on something real creepy. He wouldn't say much over the phone, just that it was some forgotten farm with a horrifying history. He never uploaded the video. No goodbye. No trace. Just gone. I drove down from Columbus the next morning. I told myself it was just one of his stunts. He'd pop back up when the time was right and act like nothing happened. But deep down, I knew this was different. I found the motel he stayed at. His room was untouched. Clothes, phone charger, even his laptop sat on the desk. But no Eli. The only thing left was a torn page from a notebook. It just said, Briarvale Farm. Follow the road past the rusted silo. Don't listen when they call. The road to Briarvale wasn't on Google Maps. I had to rely on vague directions from a wrinkled gas station attendant in Loyal who wouldn't even look me in the eyes when I said the name. He just muttered, "Should have stayed buried," and waved me off. I drove for nearly an hour through winding back roads, past collapsed barns and dead-eyed scarecrows. The air got thicker the closer I got, like something pressing against my chest. Then, just as the sun began to set, I saw the silo. Rust had eaten through most of it. The metal shimmered like old blood in the fading light. I turned onto a gravel path behind it, and there it was. Briarvale Farm. Overgrown fields, broken fences, a leaning farmhouse with shattered windows and a front porch hanging by a thread. It looked like death had moved in and never left. I parked the car and grabbed Eli's old camcorder. Maybe this was my way of finishing what he started. Maybe I just needed answers. I stepped onto the porch. The boards groaned beneath my feet. The door was slightly ajar, creaking open with a push. Inside, the air was heavy, soaked in mildew, and something coppery beneath it. The wallpaper peeled like old skin. The living room had an old fireplace. Above it, a photo hung crooked, a black and white image of a family. Mother, father, 2 boys, all blank-eyed. Then I heard it. A low howl from the fields. It wasn't wind. It was something trying to sound like wind. I followed the sound through the back door and into the field. The crops were dead, but unnaturally tall, brushing my shoulders. The air buzzed with flies. Then I saw it, a barn in the distance. Its roof collapsed inward like a broken mouth. The closer I got, the louder the sound became. Not just howling now, whispers. Come back. Eli, I see you. They came from every direction. I should have run. I should have turned back, but I didn't. The barn door was open. Inside was dark, but the camcorder's night vision lit up the space in sickly green. There were stalls, but no animals. Chains hung from beams like forgotten restraints. The floor was soaked, mud or something thicker. Then the camcorder picked up movement. Back corner. I turned toward it and froze. A figure. Tall. Human-like. But the head, it looked like a bull's skull fused with a human jaw. Gaping mouth. Empty eyes. Its body was wrapped in what looked like animal pelts, stitched together with wire. It didn't move. Not until I said Eli's name. Then it charged. I woke up outside. I don't know how long I was out. The sun was gone. The camcorder was gone. My car keys too. I staggered to the car. It was still there, but all 4 tires were slashed. Something had carved into the windshield. Leave. I didn't sleep that night. Just sat in the driver's seat with a tire iron in my lap and headlights off. At some point, I saw them. Figures in the field, all wearing animal heads. Not masks, real heads. They didn't move, just watched. I walked for 5 hours the next morning before I found a ranger station. I told them about Briarvale. They didn't believe me. They said no such place existed. That the roads I described had been closed off since the 90s, that the land was condemned after a chemical spill wiped out the livestock. But I was there. I saw the thing. I heard it. And Eli, he's still out there. I hear him in my sleep now, whispering from the fields, telling me to come back, begging me to stay. But I won't. Because once you go back to Briarvale, you never leave again. 4th story, Whispers on Hollow Creek Farm. I never believed in the stories they told about Hollow Creek Farm. Most folks around Bellwood, Texas, whispered about strange noises and odd shadows around the old barns, but I figured it was just farm animals and creaky wood settling at night. That all changed the first night I took the night shift as the farm's new night watchman. The owner, Old Man Carter, hired me after the last guy quit without notice. Said he couldn't handle the place after sundown. I thought it was just the usual farm spooks, raccoons, stray dogs, maybe a few drunk locals passing through. I was wrong. My first night started calm enough. The moon was low and fat, casting silver light over the fields. I made my rounds, checked the gates, counted the animals in the pens, horses, cows, chickens, and everything seemed normal. But then I heard it. A low, guttural growl coming from the pig pen. I shined my flashlight toward the pen. The pigs were restless, huddling in one corner, grunting loudly. Suddenly, something big lunged at the fence from inside the darkness, too big to be a pig. I froze, heart pounding. A figure stood there, tall but hunched over, with something that looked like a pig's head but twisted, human-like eyes glowing faintly in the dark. I blinked. The figure vanished. I told myself it was a trick of the light, maybe a raccoon on two legs. But as the nights went on, the noises got louder, the grunts turned into growls, and I started finding strange footprints around the farm. Big, human-sized tracks with hoof-like marks mixed in. One night, I heard whispering voices in the barn. I crept closer, heart hammering, and saw a shadow moving between the stalls. I flicked my flashlight on, and there it was again. The creature, this time clearer. Half man, half pig, its skin pale and slick like it had been underwater. It stared at me with dead eyes and spoke in a low, gravelly voice. "You don't belong here." I ran, but the creature followed, its footsteps heavy and relentless. I locked myself in the farmhouse and called Old Man Carter the next morning. He didn't seem surprised. He told me the farm was cursed, a place where old, dark rituals were once practiced to keep the animals perfect. He said those who stayed too long at night would start hearing the whispers, seeing the creature, the one they called Swintus. I didn't believe him until I saw the faded symbols carved into the barn walls and old journals filled with strange drawings and incantations. The farm was built on a blood pact, a sacrifice made long ago that tied the creature to the land. That night, I decided I had to leave. But as I packed my things, I found a note taped to my truck windshield. Written in shaky, bloody letters, it said, "You can't run from Hollow Creek." I never made it out. The next morning, the townsfolk found my truck abandoned at the edge of the farm. No sign of me anywhere. The only trace was a set of enormous footprints leading into the forest and a chilling grunt echoing through the trees. Hollow Creek Farm still stands, waiting. And if you ever hear the whispers on a cold Texas night, remember, I wasn't the first, and I won't be the last. The silence that fed the soil. They say there's something about silence that can drive a man mad. And I learned that the hard way. My name's Clayton Reese. Spent most of my life working odd security gigs around Jefferson County, Texas. Nothing fancy. Old warehouses, closed gas stations, the occasional half-abandoned feed mill. But a few months back, I got a call that'd change everything. An old man named Roy Callister had passed away. Lived out his days on a crumbling property folks round here only whispered about. Something they called the Bowers Farm. Locals avoided it like the plague, said the soil was cursed, said animals that were buried there didn't stay buried. I thought it was all talk. Then I took the job. The offer was simple. Watch the property at night, make sure nobody trespassed until the estate settled. 1 week. The pay? Real good. Too good. Should have known then. The first night, I pulled up just before dusk. The farmhouse was barely standing, its windows boarded like eyelids too afraid to open. The barn sat crooked in the field behind it, sagging like it'd been holding a breath too long. And the silence. Damn. The silence. Not a cricket, not a breeze. Just still. I set up in the farmhouse, laying my cot where the kitchen used to be. Dust choked the air like flour, and every board groaned like it remembered screams. I told myself to relax. It was just wood and wind and my imagination working overtime. Until I heard the bell. There was an old iron dinner bell out by the barn. Rusted. Didn't look like it had moved in years. But it rang. Sharp, sudden. Like someone had yanked the rope with purpose. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. Each footstep sank into the earth more than it should have. Like the ground didn't want to let go. I got to the bell. Nothing. Rope still swaying. Air thick. Then I heard the grunting. Low, wet, animalistic. I spun toward the barn. Hello? No response, just the wind finally returning, dragging the scent of something rotten with it. I should have left then. Packed up and never looked back. But I didn't. Because I'm stubborn and broke. The next few nights bled together like nightmares. Every time I'd start to drift, I'd hear something. Dragging sounds. Hollow knocking beneath the floorboards. One night, I followed a trail of muddy hoofprints leading straight through the house and out the back door, but they stopped halfway. Just stopped, like the creature vanished mid-step. I called the estate lawyer, asked if anyone had keys to the place. He laughed nervously. "You're not the first to take that job, you know?" "What do you mean? They usually quit by night 3, if they're lucky." "Lucky?" He hung up. By the 5th night, I wasn't sleeping. Coffee and nerves kept me going. That's when I started seeing it. A figure in the field, limping, hunched, like a man but wrong, arms too long, legs bent the wrong way. And its face, Christ, that face, a pig's head, stitched into a man's neck. It watched me from the tree line, didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there. I shut every door, nailed the windows shut, sat with my back to the fridge and my shotgun across my lap. Then the scratching started, from beneath the house, steady, slow, like claws on bone. I aimed at the floor, heart racing, whispered to myself to keep it together. "You're not real," I shouted, but the scratching stopped, only to be replaced by a voice. It sounded like my father. "Clay, son, come down here. I'm cold." My father died 6 years ago, buried in Grove's memorial. I screamed, fired into the floor, nothing but splinters. On the 6th night, I didn't sleep at all, just waited. The figure came again, closer this time. Walked right up to the porch. I held my breath. It stood still for a moment, then placed a small sack on the steps. When I finally opened it, I gagged. Inside were teeth, human, mixed with animal tusks. The final night, I decided to burn the barn down. Whatever was inside, it needed to end. I soaked the place in kerosene I found in the shed, lit a match and tossed it in. The fire roared. Screams followed. Not human, not animal, something between. The whole field shook like the earth was alive. The house behind me groaned and split down the middle. And from the barn, just before it collapsed, that figure ran out, ablaze, flailing, but not dying. It ran straight into the woods and vanished. I left that night, never went back, not even for my paycheck. A week later, I saw a headline online. Local boy found mutilated near abandoned Bowers farm. They blamed a wild animal, but I know better. Sometimes the soil remembers. And it feeds the silence.